Welcome to Margin Points. Today's essays are on Anthropic, Amazon, and the Knicks. We start with Anthropic. Packaging and pricing at the frontier. Anthropic can't sell its latest model because of export controls put in place late on Friday. As of writing today, it's currently working to resolve the issues with regulators. But does Anthropic need to sell its most advanced model directly at all? No. It can sustain and grow its valuation without ever doing that again. Gating is the path to extracting higher willingness to pay, as we saw when we looked at Mythos at the end of April. Anthropic doesn't need to sell models when it can sell results or qualified shots on goal from the Frontier model. The mid-level manager at Procter & Gamble doesn't need to chat with Fable on their desktop so much as have a project that is scoped to address their objectives and driven by a version of Fable delivered in specialized packaging. Why? The distribution is instant now, unlike when you had to sell PCs or smartphones, but the implementation is not. Diffuse implementation allows for better pricing around willingness to pay and better gating of access to extract maximum value. There are 1,800 public companies with a market cap of over $1 billion in the US, and a slew of private ones as well. Each of those is a potential Anthropic user interested in having something their competitor can't get or doesn't have yet. Kick off auction dynamics for exclusive access and watch profit climb, or serve everyone with variable pricing to prevent them from calling OpenAI. Anthropic could lean fully into partnerships and joint ventures focused entirely on implementations at enterprises and startups. Since they have no real consumer revenue or business and are focused only on platforms and B2B, they can have flexibility in that they can easily identify their customers, verticals, and use cases. That information can inform a strategy of stratification of models with restrictions and high degrees of specificity. The packaging can be different, not just the pricing. Consulting firms get one type of model, software firms get another, design firms yet another. Each one can be neutered or boosted depending on the requirements. Each can make their use of some frontier capabilities while restricting the fullest model for the businesses with the highest willingness to pay. Anthropic has started embedding with organizations and in May announced an enterprise AI services joint venture with Blackstone and Goldman Sachs. Both it and OpenAI have JVs on consulting and implementation. They can be creative in how they package the latest frontier model and any derivatives to avoid export restrictions. Like acquisitions, for example, Google, Windsurf, and Meta of scale, that become husks to get around regulatory scrutiny, there's no shortage of potential creativity that could be applied to this problem. This is not an easy product to regulate the implementation of. People could be thin wrappers on Fable to avoid the restrictions. OpenAI can push its frontier model, though now with more scrutiny. They might look to follow on not releasing the frontier to the public in order to maximize revenue. OpenAI has discounted ChatGPT access in the Indian market, while Anthropic has not discounted Claude for foreign markets. Discounting is gating in reverse, and this development might push Claude through the ceiling rather than looking for a door in the floor. Let's say all this export restrictions drop off in the coming weeks. Anthropic could be fined never selling the latest model to the public. Doing so would increase the value to those that it does sell to considerably. Our second essay is called Ownership is Relative. It's best to remember why an investor originally invested. This helps to best explain why there is nothing surprising at all about Amazon, one of the largest investors in Anthropic, reporting Anthropic to regulators according to the information. The report of missing guardrails against cybersecurity attacks led to the shutdown of the latest Fable model from Anthropic and the most significant development in the AI supercycle since Sam Altman's brief firing from OpenAI. Amazon originally invested when Anthropic was a fraction of the size it is now, with models that were no more advanced than what OpenAI was offering. Amazon's AWS service saw it as an opportunity to lend to a customer and help them become a much bigger customer. That there was financial upside to the equity was a nice bonus. Let's remember, though, that had Amazon been convinced that Anthropic was going to be a $1 trillion company, they likely would have invested more. The investment was a small fraction of their own market cap and would not have been significant if it went to zero. Amazon also has deals with OpenAI, Anthropic's competitor. With blinders on, it's facile to assume that because you have equity ownership in a company, that you want what's best for the company to maximize value. Here we're reminded why corporate investors fall lower on the ladder in the hierarchy of money. Their objectives are completely independent of the company. I'm not arguing that once discovered, assuming that it was a serious gap in security, that Amazon or any other investor would be expected to stuff it in between the servers in a data center. Rather, many other investors might have avoided looking for gaps entirely so that they never would have found them. Here's the perfect example of ownership only mattering in the relative sense. Amazon looked for vulnerabilities because they had an AWS golden goose to protect, and they would have done so whether or not they owned any part of Anthropic. This appears not to be snitching, but rather protecting the AWS business that could have feared being taken down by a cyber attack enabled by Fable. Some analysts peg AWS's valuation at around half of Amazon's total value, which today would put AWS's value at $1.3 trillion. This itself eclipses Anthropic's near $1 trillion valuation. The upshot is that you'd need Amazon to own all of Anthropic to even start to think about not doing anything that could slow Anthropic down. Even then, you start to weigh the relative pros and cons of action on both lines of business, and the result might still be to report Anthropic, essentially a self-report, because it will have less of an impact on the business overall than an AWS catastrophe. What did Anthropic get out of the relationship to date? Well, Amazon isn't an enemy, and they have reason to care. They avoided taking obvious foreign or Middle Eastern money in a way that could have reflected on their brand. They also prevented Amazon from a closer tie-up with OpenAI or any of the smaller labs like Cohere, Mistral, SSI, or Thinking Machines. Seems like Anthropic got all the value they could have hoped for from Amazon. They even got a few days with their model out in the market, enough to fill the pipeline of enterprises wanting full access. Our last essay today is The Knicks Aren't the Mets. Two heritage brands in New York. Both have had some rough stretches over the past number of years since their last championship, which was 1973 for the Knicks and 1986 for the Mets. With the Knicks winning the NBA Finals on Saturday, they have demonstrated what it takes to revive a heritage brand: ingenuity and not money. A finals with a New York team in them could be reliably called upon for big ratings, but the block parties in all boroughs, the crowds on the street, and the ticker tape parade hits bigger than ratings, which were the highest since Jordan's Bulls in the 1990s. This isn't a geographic or demographic question either. Close your eyes and imagine a fraction of this happening if it was the Brooklyn Nets hoisting the trophy. Not even close. The heritage creates the ties to what came before you and the better chance that those that come after you will feel the same. This was a reminder of how powerful those instincts can be and how they can survive dormant for long stretches. The outpouring during the Knicks' playoff run and finals win shows us a principle about reviving franchises and heritage brands. Even if drifting for years, there's underlying value that can be hard to compete with. There is a catch. You need actual ingenuity to make the revival happen. I'd argue that ingenuity and circumstances matter much more than sheer spending. Jalen Brunson, the Knicks star and Finals MVP, was, according to Charles Barkley, the greatest free agent signing in NBA history. This highlights the difference between the Knicks, smart signing and roster building, and the Jets, perennially hapless, and the Mets, overpaying everywhere. The Mets have the highest payroll in baseball. They outspend the number 2 payroll team, the LA Dodgers, by almost 10%. Gen X and millennial fans remember the Red Sox winning after a long drought. Gen Z even remembers the Chicago Cubs winning. The Mets won too recently to benefit from the real suffering element, but are hampered by the wrong fix of simply throwing money at the problem. The Cubs and Sox winning was ingenuity more than payroll. The Mets right now read as the opposite. If the Mets somehow won the World Series this year, it simply wouldn't be the same type of revival. The narrative is off. In basketball, consider how the Lakers benefit. The Lakers own the West Coast heritage brand for basketball. They could float around in the cellar of the league for years and maintain value. Winning eventually refills all the franchise value. The Knicks just showed it doesn't disappear in hibernation. If Luka Doncic delivers a championship, it will be because of the ingenuity of the trade that landed him in LA. For businesses, car brands like GM and Ford might be hiding more potential upside than is baked into their valuation. Airlines like American Airlines, with significantly lower market cap than peers like United and Delta, might have some of this potential too. Most investors aren't interested in waiting 53 years to unlock the value. The realization timeline is too far out to make money off of. With businesses, ingenuity is required, and missteps, GM and Ford's EV trucks, for example, can take a while to clear the air. The Knicks just showed the upside potential if you find a way to bring back the magic.